We still have folks coming in. Okay, let's go ahead and kick things off. I want to honor folks' time. It's a beautiful, warm, sunny afternoon, a little windy in Kansas City. Of course, if you don't like the weather, just wait 24 hours. I think we'll have some 40-degree weather tomorrow. But my name is Matt Tapp. I'm the Executive Director for the Platte County Economic Development Council, or EDC for short. Also contracted as administrator of the Platte County Commission's Small Business Grant Program. You may have seen some emails from me. You've also may have seen some correspondences or talked to Matt Webster with Stiefel. Matt is also on here, but before we really kick things off, I believe I saw her come on here, but I wanted to acknowledge the presence of our elected official, Dagmar Wood, who is a county commissioner. So Dagmar, I wanted to give you an opportunity to speak if you'd like to, or if not, we can move along in the agenda.
Thanks, Matt. I am fine. I'm just going to be observing. If there happen to be any questions for the commission, I can chime in, but I will just leave it for you and Mr. Webster. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Dagmar.
Hey, Mike.
Thanks, Dagmar. Matt Webster, are you on?
I am here. Good afternoon. Can everybody hear me?
I can, yes. Everyone else should as well. And a few housekeeping items real quick. I would like to ask that people mute themselves. By now, most of us should be somewhat familiar with Zoom, but it's always good to have that mute button on just in the case a dog barks or whatnot. So I really appreciate that. And Matt, you should be able to share your screen if we want to go ahead and start the presentation.
Yeah, let me see if I can get the presentation up. If I can't make this work, Matt, I'll just ask you to do it, but let me give it a try here.
All right.
Here we go.
Bear with us on technical stuff here.
Okay, and okay, is it up? Is it up, Matt?
It is. I can see it. Everyone else should as well. Can we get some thumbs up, maybe, if everyone sees it?
Very good. You want me to start?
Yeah, just real quick. Let me do a quick synopsis or a summary here, an intro. So I'm speaking with the county commissioners and presiding commissioner Ron Schieber. Ron had asked, and I think it's a great idea, and that's why we're doing it. We wanted to do a Zoom session to give folks a visual, because an email can only speak so much, but to give a visual and explain how Stiefel and the commission and the county would like to see both the expense reimbursement form, Excel spreadsheet, as well as the receipts, and lining them all up. And so we want to give this opportunity for folks to see that. So in this portion, it's a general information session. We did have the goal of having one-on-one breakout room sessions. However, there was such a strong interest with all our fine business folks here that that's logistically impossible. We would probably be here for 24 hours, but we are going to send an email out allowing folks to sign up for roughly 15-minute increment one-on-ones with Stiefel and myself and Platte County EDC to kind of go over your more specific questions. So I would like to ask that we keep questions to a more general term, not really specific to your business. We definitely want to answer those questions. It's just that we do have a number of folks on here, more than we anticipate, which is great. Just didn't allow us to do a breakout room session today. So we'll get that out as soon as possible. Also, I should be recording this meeting, which it looks like I am, and we'll make this available to you all to review and for our great businesses that were unable to attend today. So, Mr. Webster, with that introduction, I leave it to you.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Again, my name is Matt Webster, and I work for a company called Stiefel. We are financial professionals and do a variety of things, but here we are working as a contractor to the Platte County EDC to provide administrative support and technical expertise with regard to the review of these applications. So what I have today is a PowerPoint slide deck that I'm going to go through, and it's going to focus specifically on how to put together your receipts so we can review them, and then the county can review them, and then you can get paid for your grant request. At the end of this slide deck, there are some questions that we often get. So we are going to show some questions, and then we are going to answer these questions, and then we will take questions from the participants here to the extent that we have time. Again, I would ask you, try to focus on sort of general questions. If you have specific questions about your application, we're happy to address those, but we're not going to be able to address those in this session. So with that, let me just launch into this Zoom session, and we'll go through it, and hopefully this will provide some good information for everybody. So again, how to submit expense reimbursements. That's the topic of the day. So grant processing, I want to give everybody an update. The processing is underway and has been underway for a couple of months now. There were more, as you might imagine, small applications than there were large applications. So we define small applications as 25,000 or less. Most of those applications were processed without any kind of review of the receipts. So if you sent the receipts in, that was fine. We just stuck them into a file, but we didn't necessarily closely review those receipts. So once the CARES Review Committee looked at your applications, all the materials were in the file. Sometimes we had to ask you for additional information, but once the materials were in the file and reviewed, we approved, and then it went to the county commission for their approval, and then it toggles back to us for our final review. So many of these applications are under review, and then once we're done with them, we send them back to county staff, and then they ultimately make the payment. So we're reviewing many of the receipts for these, and how complicated that is depends solely on how many receipts we get. So if people are asking for lots of individual reimbursement items, it just takes longer than if they're asking for 3 or 4. Larger applications. We define larger applications as greater than 25,000. For those, we typically looked at the receipts in some level of detail before we brought them to the review committee. And the reason for that greater level of review is that in many of the grant requests, there are expenses that are ineligible. And those expenses are ineligible because people have asked for things that the county simply can't pay. And those generally relate to overhead items. So it's just an honest disagreement. It's not people trying to do something inappropriate. It's just the rules were pretty wide open. We did that on purpose. And so we did end up with a number of requests where we have to go through them carefully and make a decision about whether or not they comply with the rules of the advisory committee. Again, it just takes longer, and the applications greater than 25,000 do take long. Some of these applications have 200 pages of receipts, each one of which has to be reviewed. And so the purpose really of this Zoom session is to tell you how to put those receipts together so that we can get through them efficiently. And if they're not put together in that way, we typically contact you and then send them back and say, here's what you need to do. So we're getting a lot of the same issues. And so the purpose of this Zoom session is to let everybody know sort of what our expectations are. It's not something that any of you are going to have a hard time doing, but again, our instructions have been fairly general up to this point. This is an effort to be more specific. Required documentation. So at this point, everybody has sent in all sort of the basic information. You sent in your driver's license, you sent in your profit and loss statements, and we looked at all that. But the most important thing for us and for you is these are the expenses I want to be paid for. And then for us, it's how are those documented? So we look for information primarily in PDF formats. It could also be in Excel or Windows. Again, if you have trouble with your technology, there is no problem either sending or delivering your package to the EDC offices, and then they will get it to us, and we will scan it into our computer system. And at that point, we could, do whatever we need to do with it. If you're sophisticated about the technology, you can break it into several PDF files and just email it to us. We leave that up to you. What we can't work with is handwritten forms. There's questions about legibility. We can't really manipulate those forms. You can certainly handwrite notes on your PDF files, but don't send us like a page torn out of a notebook as your expense schedule. It won't work. And we'll send it back to you. So the CARES Act expense reimbursement form, that's really the form we use to organize the request. And then that's filled in. And then that's how we determine what the grant request is and then what the eligible items are. And so we'll get into more detail in the next slide. So here is the reimbursement form. You've probably all seen this because we've emailed it out. If you have your own version that you think is better than ours, that's fine too. It's really just getting the information on it. This is an Excel sheet. You could also do it in a Word format. We'll leave that up to you. What needs to be in this form, the important elements of it are line numbers, dates, description, and then amounts, and then page numbers. So we need to have a date of expense because there are certain dates. There's a range of dates from March 1 through June 30. That's the expense reimbursement date. If you send us expenses from February or you send us expenses from July, they will not be reimbursed because they're not eligible under this program. We need a description of the expense so that we can qualify the expense. We need the expense amount, obviously. And then if you send us this form and you send us, 25 or 50 or 200 pages of receipts behind it, you must sequentially page number each of those pages so that when we look for the receipt, we're not searching through pages randomly. We know where to go. It has to be like an index in a book. Again, there's various ways to do this, but it has to be something that we can find quickly. If we can't get through this quickly, we will send it back to you with instructions about how to do it, and you'll have to redo it, or it will never get reviewed. The other thing I would say that's very important is, don't say rent and put 4 months of rent on one line. Have a separate line for each individual expense that you are trying to get reimbursement for, and then have that line refer back to a page number in your receipt package. And that way we can find it. And that way, if we find an expense that you're seeking reimbursement for that is not eligible, we will take it out. We will tell you that we've taken it out, and we can all agree on what's happened rather than be confused about what went on. So it's very important to be organized. And I know this is difficult, but the reason for this is that the federal government granted this money to the states. So the county of Platte got the money from the state treasurer, and now the county is running this program. So we are potentially open to audit from the county auditor, from the state of Missouri, and from the federal government. And so it's absolutely imperative that we have a very careful understanding of what everybody's asking for, and we'd be able to demonstrate to auditors what we've done. And there's no shortcut around this. It's either we get it and we pay, or we don't get it. Now, again, if you don't have information for one line or another, we can just take that line out, and we'll pay for whatever is eligible, and we can record. But there is a high level of scrutiny to this, and therefore there's a high level of evidence required. Supporting documents. So I've got some samples here, and I want to be really clear. We're not looking for reasons to reject your package, and we're not looking to give anybody a hard time. There are lots of ways to do this. So this Evergy payment history, if you go online, you can download this depending on how your business is set up. And this is perfect because it shows the monthly bill, and then it shows that it's been paid. And that's fine. Now, if you don't have something like this, send us the monthly statements and then send us a canceled check that goes with it. That's also fine. There's lots of ways to do this, but the basic point is you have to show us evidence of what the charge is, and then you have to show us evidence of payment. So it's typically 2 pieces of paper for each request. It would be, your rent invoice, and then it would be the canceled check or bank statement for that rent invoice. And if you have canceled checks, please provide both the front and back. If you have a bank statement that shows the canceled check, it will show typically the front of that check, and then you can circle it or note it or highlight it on your bank statement, and then just turn that into a PDF and send it. Again, we're going to be reasonable about this, but we do need to have clearer evidence of what the charge is for. I've seen many expense ledgers that people have sent me that are full of abbreviations. I have no idea what they mean. And if we can't figure it out, we'll just send it back and say, where's the billing statement that goes with that expense line in your expense report? And then where is the evidence that you paid it? So the more organized you are, the better it is. And having too many pieces of paper is better than having too few. And again, as long as it's organized and we can get through it, that's the most important thing. Next slide. So one of the things that we see repeatedly I'll say, there are many applicants that are very small businesses. So a sole practitioner or just 1 or 2 employees. And in that case, you're probably paying somebody with a check, or maybe you have a payroll company. It's very easy to just give us those records. But if you have a larger company with dozens or scores of employees, you probably have a ADP or a Paychex or something. Don't send us the one summary sheet for each pay period. Send us the detail for each individual who you're paying. And those reports can be, put together a lot of different ways. So just, send us what you have and we'll tell you whether it works or not. This is an example of an ADP report. The reason we need to see that is because we need to know what the dates are, and there are limits about how much we will reimburse for payroll. So we will reimburse somebody up to the average payroll for an individual in Platte County, which I believe is about $76,000 a year. If you're making $200,000 a year, we don't reimburse up to that level. There is a limit on this, and that's why we need to see these individual line items. If it's a matter of confidentiality, you don't want to show somebody's name on the report. Just take a magic marker and black out their last name, or black out their social security number, whatever it is. You can feel free to do that. And then, show us some evidence that this was paid, either the matching payment from a bank statement or something like that, so that we have that piece of it. The next one here is just another format for payroll detail. A lot of the payroll we look at is hourly payroll. It's people who get paid by the hour. That's very simple, and there's just an example of the payroll detail. And there are other examples as well. I want to be real clear on something that maybe not everybody understands. We reimburse for W-2 wages. So if you are hiring outside contractors who are not your employees, that is not a reimbursable expense, and we will take that off the expense file. If you are somebody, a professional who pays yourself a draw, you just write yourself a check on a monthly basis or quarterly basis, but you don't do any withholding from that check, that will not be reimbursed. Draws, whether they're to yourself or to your partners, are not a reimbursable expense. Wages and payroll are, but it has to be W-2 payroll. That's a threshold matter that the CARES Advisory Review Committee made a decision about, and that's just their bottom line on payroll. Rent. So here's an example. I didn't include the back images of these checks, but if you have April rent, show us the front and back if it's just a check, or show us, a bank statement that clearly says rent. There are many instances where we just see some check and there's no notation of, what month it's covering. So please be clear about what the rent is for. And rent, rent can be just the amount you pay for space. It could also include what we call CAM, common area maintenance. So it's fine to request reimbursement for CAM and rent. We consider both of those to be eligible expenses, but just be clear about what you're asking for and be clear about the date. And another point here, I think that bears mentioning, some people have gotten agreements to delay payment from their landlord. But you have to give us evidence that you have paid the rent before you can seek reimbursement. This is a reimbursement only program. This is not a program where we send you money because you say you're going to pay your rent. You have to pay your rent and then submit the receipt for reimbursement, and then we'll pay you back. So you can do that more than once. I mean, if we write you a check for everything on your expense, but to some amount, you can circle back later, and if it's an allowed expense that we've approved, after you've got the cleared check, you can come back to us, and we'll send you a separate check. So again, if that's your situation, just talk to us and we'll explain that in more detail. Over there on the right-hand side of this slide, number 10, PPE purchases. So one of the things that's clearly eligible under this program is if you've bought cleaning supplies or if you've bought equipment to run your business that's directly related to COVID relief, or if you've contracted with a company to do cleaning, again, that's specifically related to COVID, just make sure that statement or that receipt and then the payment related to that statement and receipt show what it is that we're paying for. Because if you show us a receipt from Costco where you bought a bunch of hand sanitizer and we don't see hand sanitizer on the receipt from Costco, the county won't reimburse that. So it just has to be specific and it has to be identifiable. So that's again, I think I mentioned that, but it's important. Next one. So here's the expense sheet, and I just wanted to talk about the package. So the package of evidence that we're looking for, the first page in the package is the expense report cover sheet. Again, if you can put it together in PDF or Excel, that's great. If you can send us the Excel file, that's even better for us, because then if we have to make modifications to it, it's very easy to do. Again, one expense on each line, number of the pages, and then on the pages that you have, the index, the receipt back in the index, feel free to highlight or circle, and you can write notes on those pages. Just please make sure they're legible so we can read them. And I've said this before, but we need both of the following: the clear description of the expense, whether it be a receipt or an order form or whatever it might be, and then clear evidence of the payment, which is typically a credit card statement or a bank statement or a bank check. And then email it, drop it off, mail it, however you want to do it, we'll take it. So now we're into the Q&A section. So I want to go over a few questions that I get a lot, and then I'll open it up for more questions from all of you. But so with that, I think some of the things you're probably thinking of will be here, and hopefully this is helpful too. So questions. First question: what's the timeline for processing? We have lots of applications. We have more than 250 applications. The amount of time they take is directly related to how carefully they are prepared. So we are hoping to speed everything up by doing a meeting like this and then getting information that makes it easier for all of us. We've got a team of people working on this, but it is taking time. What expenses can be reimbursed? So I just want to remind everybody, because there has been some confusion. Rent or mortgage interest are clearly reimbursable. Payroll is reimbursable. Utilities are reimbursable. COVID supplies and COVID cleaning are reimbursable, and certain kinds of overhead are reimbursable. And it is the overhead expenses where people most put things in that we end up rejecting because there can be an honest disagreement about what you consider overhead and what the CARES advisory committee considers overhead. So if you have put overhead in and we don't agree that it's overhead, we will let you know and tell you why. Again, we have rules, but we are trying to be as open as we can. And then the last and probably least common element is inventory replacement. So what the CARES Advisory Review Committee means by inventory replacement is if you were running a store or a restaurant and you had to throw something away because you closed, and then you had to buy more of it later, that is what inventory replacement is. Inventory replacement is not, you run a boutique and you bought some more clothes to sell after you reopened, and so now you want the county to reimburse you for those clothes. That doesn't work. The inventory replacement is a very limited set of circumstances. So we will, we'll let you know. Very few of these applications have inventory replacement, but I've seen a number where people just misunderstand what inventory replacement is. So I just wanted to clear that up. And again, if you have more questions, you can reach out to us later. Why is so much documentation required? That just gets back to the audit requirements. That's the beginning and end of it. Is the financial information I provide confidential? This is an important one for a lot of people. When you originally applied, you were required to give us information about your business. It could have been a tax return. It was a profit and loss statement for 2019 and 2020. And it was ID information like your driver's license. That is all confidential. We are not sharing that with anybody. Everything that you send in related to these expenses, so the expense sheet and all the backup, including your bank statements and credit card statements, are public information as soon as they are sent to the county. So they will be sent to the county, and the county will keep those, and anybody who asks the county for those records can get a copy of them. So if your social security number or your full bank account number or your full credit card account number are on those forms, take a black magic marker and mark them out. Some people aren't concerned about it. Some people have forms of those documents that eliminate that information. We don't mind if you give us redacted documents that eliminate account numbers, but there is no way for us to keep that information confidential. If you want to get paid, you have to have evidence of the receipt, and that evidence will become part of the public record once the county finalizes the grant and writes you a check, and it'll end up in a file, and people can get access to that file under state law. There is nothing we can do about that. But that does not include things like your tax return. So don't worry about that. More questions. When do I send in my financial documents? So if you haven't sent in your receipts already, send them in. Generally, we have everything from everybody. Now, certain people have dropped stuff out of the file, and if you discover that you've dropped something out of the file that you thought you'd sent, or that we might have lost, or might have gotten lost in the email, by all means, send it in. We have not yet closed the deadline for receipt processing. When we decide on what the deadline is, we will send everybody an email. So it's not going to be a situation where it's going to be a surprise. But if you haven't sent in your receipts, put together the package and send them in. And that way we have them, and we don't have to wait longer than necessary. And again, I think I've already touched on this. We have not yet put a deadline on the receipt of the receipts, but we will do that shortly, and we'll let everybody know. We've talked about this. Email to us is the easiest way, but if you have a big file and you can't or don't know how to break it into smaller files, then hand deliver to Matt Tapp's office, and he'll get it to us, and then we'll take it from there. How should we prepare the documents? I put this on here because I think it's so important. Please use a typewriter or an Excel spreadsheet or a Word document. Do not send us handwritten forms. We just simply can't do it. With that, I'll open it up to participant questions. Matt, Tap, I'll turn it back to you and you can moderate this.
All right. Yeah, thank you, Matt. That was a lot of good information. Hopefully, the business representatives on here found that informative and will greatly assist their efforts here. So let's go in chronological order. And the first question we got was from Hannah. Will you communicate with us if a piece of information we provided doesn't meet your standards so we can resubmit?
Yes, the answer is yes. And the complexity of this is really to the point where sometimes we will pass something on to the county and the county's checkers will identify something, but we will get back to you. And if the entire package is just sort of so confusing that we can't understand it or has lots of problems, we'll get back to you very early in the process and basically say redo it. I think most of what we get doesn't need to be redone, but I have some packages where there's 50 or 100 pages, none of it page numbered, and you take one look at it and there's just no way to figure out what's in it, and those go back immediately.
Okay. Next question is from Robert Poe. Robert asks, will any of this information be available to the public or media? Do we need to redact information on receipts? Now, I think that came in before you may have addressed that, Matt, but it's a good point to stress again.
So yeah, so Robert, it's a good question specifically for receipts. Again, if you have an ADP run, and you don't want everybody in the world to potentially know how much you're paying individual employees, that's a real good reason to redact the names. I would just suggest, leave the first name and just black out the last name kind of thing. With regard to your statement, so if you're providing, credit card statements or utilities, I'm not sure anybody cares much what, how much anybody pays in utilities, but yeah, feel free to black out page numbers. The bottom line is we can't do it. So if you don't do it, it won't happen. And then when it goes over to the county, I have no idea who, if anybody, wants to review this or what they would do with it if they reviewed it. But somebody who wants to write an interesting article about where all the money went could certainly ask the county for those records, and they could get them, and they could troll through them, and who knows what happens after that.
Okay. Jorge Martinez asked, how does someone find out where we are in the process? And I can partially answer that question. I would say, Jorge, that if you do want to know where we're at in the process, where we had a lot of folks reach out, email either pccares@plattecountyedc.com. I'll put it in the chat here. You can email me, that's mtapp@plattecountyedc.com. And I'd encourage you to copy Matt Webster on the email, especially because they really handle the receipt process and everything we talked about today. But that's how I'd answer that.
So I'll follow on with the following remarks. We're not offended or annoyed by people reaching out to us. And what I'd like to say is we will tell you whether we have everything or we're waiting for something, because with so many applications, we might have sent you something that ended up in your spam box, and maybe something ended up in our spam filter. So it's always, it's fine to check and say, hey, did you get everything? Are you still waiting for something? But if we tell you that we have everything or we're waiting for something, then you don't need to get back to us, because it's just in process. And we have so many of these applications. Generally, what we're trying to do is sort of first come, first serve, but even that doesn't really work. So that's my answer.
Okay. So we had another question related to letting folks know what's not acceptable. I think we covered that as well. Another question here from Robert Kurland. Hi, Robert. Does internet expense fall under utilities?
Yeah, generally it does.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I would say so, yes. Lori Wolf asks, I have had to pay for virtual options to deliver services for my clients. Will this be covered under your Thrive program? And Matt, I would have a follow-up question to Lori of what does that mean, virtual option to deliver services? Was that something actually purchased, actual physical piece of equipment? Was that software? What was that? And do you have a direct tie to an impact caused by COVID?
Yeah, so I mean, the way we look at this is, we want to be reasonable, but I will say that people have asked us to buy them a truck, to buy them a car. The answer to that is no. But if you can explain it, and it's a cost specifically related to COVID, that is a defined category that's reimbursable. Just be as clear as you can, and give us the invoice, and the statement, and we'll definitely consider it.
Yeah.
By the way, I don't make decisions about this. What I do is take the guidance of the advisory committee and apply it to the application. So this is not, hey, do I sign off on this, or am I okay with this? This is the advisory committee operating on behalf of the county, and then ultimately the staff of the county reviewing what it is we send over. And we try to be on the same page, but given the complexity of this, there's always room for disagreement. And as I said before, I know that both we and the county are very focused on approving payments, not giving people a hard time or taking things off their list.
And just real quick, Matt, to address the Thrive program piece of that question, when we first talked about an overall program for the county, Presiding Commissioner Ron Schieber and the county commissioners talked about a Survive and Thrive, and that name kind of stuck as an overall title for the program. And our hope was to have a Thrive component where we could look at what's called revenue replacement, which is obviously and typically the heaviest impact caused on small businesses is that you had a higher revenue stream pre-COVID, and then COVID hit and your revenues really bottomed out. Unfortunately, the states and the federal government said we can't do that. We've got to stick to the expense side. So that's why we talk about how this is purely an expense reimbursement program. So any questions tied to a Thrive component, just simply not allowed in the CARES Act. So.
And so I have seen on a number of applications where somebody said, I used to make, $20,000 a month, and then it went down to $5,000 a month. So I want you to write a check to us for $15,000 to make up the difference. And that gets back to what Matt said. That is revenue replacement. And if you paid an employee because you wanted to keep that employee working, then yeah, we'll reimburse the payroll or the salary. But we don't reimburse for money that you thought you were going to make in a given month and you didn't make because of the COVID-19 pandemic. So that just gets taken right off.
Okay, let's move on to the next question. We've got a number, which is great. Let's see, Kathy asks, if you have an expense that is paid annually, i.e. insurance, can that expense be broken down to a monthly amount and have that reimbursed for the time period allowed?
Yes. So yeah, I mean, just be clear, give us the statement, that shows what that is, and that it is an annual charge. I mean, most of the insurance that I see is a monthly or quarterly, and so it sort of takes care of itself. But yeah, if you pay one lump sum and you want to ask for reimbursement, I don't see any particular problem with that.
MJ Butler asks, I think I've turned everything in. When will we know when we've been approved? I think we've addressed that on your status updates. So if you do want to know where your application is at, then be sure to email Matt Webster or myself, and we'll make sure to include those email addresses in the comments. Anything to add on that, Matt?
No, I think we've been over that.
Okay. Kathy asks, should you redact your signature on copies of cashed checks?
I don't think there's any need for that.
I think that's your personal preference if you so desire. It's probably good to have the signature so that we see that it was cleared, but you can also get the backside of the check as well. MJ Butler asks, when can we schedule a private 15-minute session to make sure everything is taken care of? So as I mentioned when I kicked this thing off, and maybe folks hopped on later, we're going to send out an email to everybody with the opportunity to sign up. So look for your email and respond, and there'll be certain dates, and just request your particular time slot. So in my world, it's a lot like our parent-teacher conferences, or at least pre-COVID, where you sign up for your time slot and it's first come, first serve. So be looking out for those emails. Kathy says, how do we know if you have everything you need from us? I think we've covered that. Then MJ Butler asked, I would like to redact everything, but it's already been turned in. I don't trust public records. I didn't know about that.
So just send Matt Tapp an email and he'll forward it on to me, and we will honor that request. So that's not a problem. We can get that done.
Okay. And it's important to note too, Matt, that if you choose to redact everything, then the county won't be able to review the expenses, and as such, you won't be reimbursed.
Well, I don't know what redact everything means. I just assume that, that you take out account information, that sort of thing. I would say this, that there is absolutely no reason to distrust the county. These are state laws, and the state, like most states, allows people to ask for records that end up in a public file. So there's nothing inappropriate about this. This is just the way most states operate. Now, the states do have separate rules for tax returns. Those are held confidential under state law.
Matt, I would add too that if you want to redact quite a bit of information, that's fine. We just got to make sure, let's say it's a bank statement, that we can tell it's your bank statement and it's
Right.
in the time period we're talking about. But if you want to redact everything that doesn't apply to your expenses, then redact away.
Yes.
Am I right, Matt?
Yeah, or just schedule a call or a Zoom meeting or something, and we'll talk about it.
Yeah. Okay. Michael Rose said or asked, can we redact our company name on financial statements since they become available to the public?
The financial statements are not leaving my server. They are not part of the public record. And the answer would be no, because if you redacted your name from the financial statements, they would have no meaning whatsoever. But the financial statements are not getting in to the county's files.
Okay. Looks like Katie Chappell asks, the sample form in the recent email had a column in the form called identifier, which included words rather than just numbering the expenses in order and using that number on accompanying receipts and documentations. Which do you want?
Yeah, I'd like both. I put a version together that had identifier, and again, there's lots of different ways to do this. I would like to have a page number reference that relates to a page number on the receipts, and you can if you know how to work Adobe, there's a function that does that, but you can feel free just to write the numbers on the pages, in a pen or pencil or something. That works too. Just as long as we can make it through. When you have 100 pages and you're trying to find a number in those 100 pages and they're not ordered, there's no way to do it.
Okay. Michael asks, have any large disbursements been paid out already?
Yes.
Okay. Paula Owens asks, how do we give you ACH receipts?
I don't know. Give me what you've got. Most banks or financial institutions have software systems that will allow businesses to create various kinds of reports, and that's specific to each business, that's specific to each bank. I would just say, as long as it's clear and can be understood in a reasonable way, that's all I care about.
Okay. What if you use an ongoing cleaning service and don't receive or have evidence of a bill?
Well, just put it. Show us in your financial statements where it is, and make a note of that, and we'll discuss it with the county's finance staff and see what their view of that is.
Okay. Let's see. Katie asks, you mentioned as an example mortgage interest. I understood that full mortgage payment could be submitted and had not seen any indication until this statement that principal portions should not be included. If that is correct, do we adjust our request or leave that up to your auditors?
So if we see mortgage interest, so if we see a mortgage payment, we'll ask you that. There are very few instances where mortgage payments have been submitted for reimbursement. So yes, if you did that, if you would tell us like what part of the payment is principal or interest, that would be very helpful. But if you didn't do that or haven't done it, we will probably ask you if we can't figure it out.
Okay. Frank asks, what if you pay yourself and your employees in cash with the receipt and a W-2 is sent out at the end of the year?
I don't know. Write it up. I frankly haven't seen that.
We might, I guess. Steve Montague asks, are franchisee fees reimbursable?
No.
Okay. Bob asks, if we pay contractors for a service in cash during this time frame and submit a handwritten receipt for that expense that is signed by them, is that acceptable?
So most services that you contract are not reimbursable under this program. That's just not the way this works. So if most of that would be ineligible. I mean, you can certainly submit it and explain how it works, what your view of it is, but most services are provided by employees, and the payroll or salary of your employee is reimbursable. If you contract with some third party, that typically is not reimbursable. Now, if it's specific to COVID or something, I guess we might consider it, but it has not been the practice of the advisory review committee to approve those expenses.
Dana asks, are employee benefits reimbursable, i.e. health insurance?
Yes.
Paula asks, can you give us examples of overhead expenses that are not acceptable so we can save you some trouble?
So as you know, Matt Tapp, there is a memo that was prepared by the advisory review committee that speaks to this. And if you want just send us an email saying, I'd like the memorandum relating to overhead expenses, and we'll send it to anybody. It's a public document. It's fairly detailed. The problem with overhead is it's specific to every industry. It means different things to different people. We did the best we could, but there is always some level of discretion. And I think we probably got 90 to 95% of the issues resolved, but there could be something we haven't thought of. And if we haven't thought of it, we'll ask the advisory review committee what their view is and get back to you.
I just actually put that in the chat so folks can click on download that resolution 6 by the advisory committee for overhead. But also, like Matt said, feel free to email us. Let's see, let me get back on my spot here. Is property insurance a reimbursable expense?
Yes.
Okay. Let's see, Katie asks, are bank statements include copies of the fronts of all checks cleared as are listed on the bank statement? It does not show the back of the checks, however. In this case,
yeah. So if it's an image on a back statement, that's fine. I do realize that. It's just whatever you have. We're not trying to be unreasonable, but typically, if you give us the statement and the statement shows the image of the check, that's fine.
And she goes on to ask, in this case, since one can trace the check number cleared to the accompanying copy of the front of the check, do we need to submit repetitive copies of the bank statement for every expense? Or can we use the identifier numbers and write that in beside every expenses cleared check and copy of check? While that will take a fair amount of time to trace by the auditors, it seems better than submitting 34 copies of our 8 to 10 page bank statements.
You can try it, and if it's unacceptable to the county finance staff, we'll get back to you.
I would say that, much like the expense reimbursement as a cover sheet, there's no reason to have many copies of the same bank statements. You point back to it.
Again, it all depends on how you index things, but yes, there is never a reason to provide more than one copy of anything. And if you number all the pages, and you can just refer to the same numbers, for multiple items. That's sort of the purpose of having a cross reference.
Another question here. I am a franchise and I bought COVID supply altogether from Sam's Club, but got delivered at my other store. Can I split it and sum it the receipt? So probably sum up the receipt.
Yeah, so that's fine. Again, if you have two locations and one of them is in Platte County, just say I bought, I bought $500 worth and I've got two stores, and so $250 of it went to my store in Platte County. I think that's fine, and I think that would be acceptable. I can't speak for the county in that regard, but I think that's definitely reasonable. But that's something where you just need to explain what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. We had an example where a business had multiple locations. Like I think two of the three were in Platte County. The other one was not. So they basically did a straight percentage. If I remember right, is that correct, Matt?
Yes. Yeah. Just prorate it. Whatever you think is appropriate. Again, we'll take your judgment on that and just react to it.
Okay. Don asks, what is the proper way to redact documents?
Well, I would take my black magic marker and just mark through it, and then make a photocopy of it or PDF of it. I know it's a real pain in the neck to redact documents. It just is. So whatever works for you, just send us something. I mean, don't redact the name of the company. Don't redact it so completely that it no longer has any meaning. If it looks like something that the CIA just released and it's just a blank page with four words left on it, that's not going to work. So do try to be reasonable about your redaction. I think that redactions should go to things like account numbers, or maybe people's personal information, like a name of an employee who you don't want the whole world to know how much you're paying the guy, something like that.
Okay. Also, if you're digitally savvy or can use PDF software, quite a bit of those have black squares, or you can create black squares in there. So kind of depends on which way you want to go. Katie asks, if we've learned something here that suggests we should not have included something, should we delete it or keep the form the same as was originally submitted?
Well, if you made a mistake, please tell us. And what I really don't want is, I don't want somebody to send me, a 5-page email and say, oh, 5 pages of that package are incorrect. Here, just slip these new 5 pages in. If you have made a mistake or you want to change something, then send us a whole new package and say the email of October 10th was incorrect. The new email of October 22nd you should be used in place of it. So send us the whole thing, because otherwise it gets so confusing so quickly that we can't keep track of it.
Okay. See, MJ Butler asked, I believe the months we are asking for reimbursement coverage for eligibility between February through June 2020. Will there be another grant application be available for months after the period covered up to the current? So actually, for a quick correction, MJ, we're talking about March through June for the original release. And we have had conversations with the county commissioners, and Dagmar is more than welcome to chime in, but we do believe that there will be room in the budget to potentially do another round. So we're talking with the county commission. So that's a great question, and I definitely want to bring that up. So I appreciate that. So be on the lookout of social media, all the chambers, and we'll get the word out as much as possible if or when that next round of funding shakes out.
And I want to be clear about one thing. Nobody is going to not be paid because the county ran out of money under this program. There is enough money to pay all of the requests. It's just a matter of time and effort required to work through the backlog of these applications. So if it takes time, it doesn't mean that we're going to run out of money. That's not the issue here. It's just complying with the requirements that the program relating to documentation. And if we put deadlines on this because the county finance staff needs those deadlines in order to wrap everything up, we will let everybody know.
Just know that any subsequent rounds will be extremely streamlined, as we've learned quite a bit going through this process. And so it'll be very much more streamlined, like I said. So be on the lookout for that. Hopefully we can get that going. Let's see. Jennifer asks, are parts and paint and materials reimbursable expenses?
I'm sorry, say that again, Matt. I don't think I heard the question.
Are parts and paint and materials reimbursable expenses?
Probably not, but again, just describe what it is you mean.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to me, it depends on, again, if there's a direct nexus connection to an impact caused by coronavirus. Kathy asks, are property/biz taxes reimbursable? This would be an annual expense, then broken down into the qualifying months.
Yeah, most taxes other than like sales taxes are not reimbursable.
Correct. Jennifer asks, can we add property insurance and health insurance, which we covered before, but can we include property insurance, health insurance on this?
Well, for most people, we have at this point, I'm not sure people can add much of anything. You've given us your application and we've reviewed your application. If it's in there and it's reimbursable, we'll pay it, but you can't submit a new application with new expenses. That's not how the program works.
But yeah, we said health insurance. If it's for employees, that can certainly count as part of in the payroll area. Property insurance should as well, should it not, Matt? Let's just say that
I think we have reimbursed that.
Yeah. Let's see, and then Robert said, thank you, good information. So I believe we've gone through all the questions, almost right on the hour. I did want to give an opportunity if someone wanted to unmute themselves and ask a quick question. Again, we want to keep it on a more general level, but to close out the hour, if you had a question and did not get a chance to put it in chat, now would be a good time to raise that. If you want to unmute yourself, it should be in the lower left-hand side of your window, and we'll be happy to answer those questions.
I just want to say thank you.
Whoever said that, you're welcome. I couldn't tell who that was, but thank you.
MJ. All right. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Thanks, MJ.
Matthew, do you have a telephone number to call?
Yeah, I do. It's 816-270-2119.
And is that for Matt Webster?
That's for myself. Are you asking for Matt Webster's phone number?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll give you my phone number. Sure. I sometimes have a hard time getting back to everybody, but if you call, I will get back to you. It's 816-446-5312.
And Matt, when I didn't want to make you misunderstood, but not general franchise fees, but monthly franchise fees for ongoing support.
I would have to know more specifics. Again, it comes down to what's overhead. And again, if you ask for that memo, I believe it might address franchise fees directly, if I recall accurately.
Okay.
I just want to chime in and say thank you to you guys. You've been incredibly helpful on this process, and I've communicated with you both through emails, and your willingness to help and chime in and clarify has been stellar, and I appreciate you more than I can probably explain here. So bless you for the work you're doing.
Well, thank you for the kind words.
And I'm not really Katie Chappell, that's my granddaughter, but my my son-in-law set up my Zoom and her name shows up. So that's not me, but I'll take her name because she's pretty.
Well, no, thank you. And I appreciate folks' patience too. And I do understand the frustration, delay perhaps in some of our responses. And I just want to apologize for that. And we're working as hard as we can diligently through these. Matt had mentioned how many applications we've had. We've had roughly 272 unique businesses apply. To give you perspective, most programs I've seen at most have 50, maybe 100 applications. So it's been a great response from you all. I just encourage again that great patience, and we're going as fast as we can because we know every day counts in your world. So we are working as hard as we can.
Can I ask one more?
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Yeah, if you had a question, sure.
In the last email that came out, there was a link to submit the documentation. Email it all in, as it sounded like one continuous document. In other words, all the PDFs scanned sequentially so that everything was there. Is that email recipient and information accurate? Has anything changed on that?
No, nothing's changed. I believe that was one of my assistants. So, depending on how your system works, if you need to break it into 3 or 4 PDFs, just put like 1, 2, 3, 4 at the end or beginning. That's fine. I get that all the time.
Okay.
We don't really have big, we can receive files up to 10 or 20 megabytes, I think. But it just really depends on what you're doing. Just make it logical. So if you have to send 3 or 4 emails, we know how to put them, we know how to reassemble them once we get them.
Okay. I will work on someone more tech savvy than me. Thank you.
Matthew?
Sure.
Actually, Matthew Webster, this is Frank Moyer.
Okay.
And I asked a question about how to put the receipts together for when we make our payroll, we do it in cash. And then at the end of the year, my accountant sends out a W-2. And you said, we'll just send it in and we'll see. How can I make that more clarifying?
So Frank, it's a valid question. Let me talk to the county finance staff, because that's very unique. I'm not aware of any other situation like that. I'll talk to them and we'll get back to you, so that you don't waste your time doing something that still we still isn't adequate for our purposes.
Okay. When should I just call or?
Shoot me an email saying, question about cash payroll.
Okay. I mean,
What I'll do is I'll talk to the county finance staff. Probably I'll try to talk to them tomorrow. And then as soon as I've had a discussion, I'll get back to you with some guidance on that.
All right. Thank you.
I'm just typing up our email addresses. Matt, you're welcome to do so on the chat as well if you'd like. Are there any other questions out there? If not, we want to get folks out there and perhaps enjoy the last 80-degree weather for a while. Okay.
All right. Well, good luck to everybody. We're doing the best we can. And it may take us a while to get back to you, but we will get back to you if you reach out.
Yep. And Matt, thanks again for your time and your willingness to share all this information. Dagmar Wood, Commissioner, if you're still on, you're welcome to close it out.
Yeah, I just want to thank everybody with the Platte County EDC and Stiefel for helping to administer this and this. I appreciate the small business owners' patience with this. I've heard it described as we're kind of building a plane as we're flying it at the same time. It's something that's, never has been done. And so it has taken longer than what all of us would have wished, but we have a lot of I's to dot and T's to cross, and we want to make sure that everybody's represented well. So we really appreciate your patience. I want to thank everybody who's worked long hours. I know Matt Webster and his team have worked weekends and everything to push this money out as fast as they can. And I'm just very, very grateful. Hopefully there'll be another round that we'll be able to announce, and it'll be on the Platte County EDC website. If we do offer that, we have some public entity expenses that we're going to probably be addressing. But I do believe that we're going to have some more monies left over, but we'll let you know through the EDC. So thank you so much. I appreciate all the work.
Thank you, Dagmar, and I really appreciate you and the commissioner's attention to small business, and really jumped at the chance to help out. And as I tell all my small businesses when we chat over the phone or I get the opportunity, let's keep our heads up, keep our chins up, and we'll get through this. Thanks everybody for your time, and I'll talk later.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Will we be receiving a way to review this?
Yeah, it's being recorded, so we'll make sure to get it out as best we can, depending on the file size. But yeah, stay tuned, email or otherwise, and I will let folks know the availability of the video.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.